Okay, what we're going to look at now, since we know how to make a box and whisker plot, we're going to see how we can compare scores and how we can utilize what data is here to answer questions. So in this particular problem, they're showing two science classes with the same number of students taking a final exam. It's important to note that they say the two science classes with the same number of students, because we need to know in a box and whisker plot, the information is divided into 4 sections. And if I had 100 pieces of data or 100 pieces of data in my data set, that would mean that each section would have 25. If I had 44 pieces of data, then I should have 11. If I only had 4 pieces of data, which would be very small, I'd only have 1. So it's important to notice that they are comparing the same amount of students. So whether you go from the minimum to your maximum in Class A or your minimum and your maximum in Class B, they are having the same amount of students. They have the same number of students. And so now we're just going to go ahead and take a look. And they're saying that the box and whisker plots summarize the test scores. They want us to use the box and whisker plot to answer the questions. And so the first question they have is, a score above 70 is considered passing. Which class has more passing scores? Well, before we go on, we want to go ahead and just take a look at some information that we need to know. When we are looking at a box and whisker plot, okay, when we look at our box and whisker plot, let me just take a look. And we'll look at that piece a little bit later. Let me just get to where I want to be. They have 5, okay, they're listing a 5-number summary in a data set. And the 5-number summary, and it's something that we've already looked at before, okay? It's something that we've looked at before. We have a minimum and a maximum. So here's our minimum. This is our minimum. Our maximum for Class A is over here. The maximum for Class B is over here. When we take a look at our middle number, the median, okay, for Class A, it's going to be right here. For Class B, it's going to be here. And then we can further take a look at our first quartile, which is the far left of our rectangular box. That is the first quartile or the lower quartile. And then we take a look at the green, which is our median score. And then on the right side of our box, of our rectangle, we have the third quartile or the upper quartile. And again, we need to realize that there is 25% of our information here, 25% of our information here. We've got another 25% here, another 25% here, 25% of our information here, 25% of our information here, and then the next 25% is here, and the 25% is here. And so just looking at this, if you look at the third quartile to the maximum in Class A, there is a much greater spread, even though they would have the same number of students, So we're saying a score above 70 is considered passing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and look at the score of 70, and here's our 70. That's considered passing. That is a passing grade. That's what they're telling us, that it is a passing grade. So which class has more passing scores? Well, what we would need to do is start looking at our information, and they're saying which class had more passing scores. Well, if you look at our lower quartile, anything above 70 is going to be passing. So that makes that correct. And take a look at Class A. Look at where their passing score is. And it would be somewhere, if I'm going to draw this right, somewhere up around this area. And we do know that this part of the information is 25%. This is 25%. and obviously this is going to be another 25%. And when we take a look at Class A, even though it looks like their upper 25% is good, it's spread out, we would have to look at something like this and say that that is 25% of their information, and that would be their passing scores. And in Class B, if you look, it looks to be that 75%, this area, and this area, would be 75% of their total that would be passing, whereas it looks like Class A only has 25% passing, and everyone else is in the non-passing section. But now let's take a look. If they said which class has the highest test score, which class has the highest test score? Well, now that's going to be pretty clear because that's your maximum. We've got this as our maximum, and in Class A we have the 90 as a maximum. So then obviously it's going to be Class A in that regard. If we took a look at the next one, which class had a higher median test score? Well, we have to know that the median is going to be the line inside of our rectangle. And which class had a higher median score? Well, it's Class B. And now this is the tricky one. Which class had test scores with a larger interquartile range? Now, this is something we have to know by definition. Interquartile range. We're going to take a look. This is your lower quartile, or Q1. And then we have our upper quartile, which is the far right of our rectangle. And we need to know what a range is. A range is going to be the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. Well, the value for Class A, the lowest value appears to be a 60. The lowest value for Class B appears to be a 70. And then if we look at the highest score, it appears for Class A it's about 65, 6, 7, let's say about 68. And then if I'm looking at the test score here, we've got 75, 76, about 78. And then if we go ahead and find the difference here, the interquartile range for this particular class is going to be an 8. The interquartile range for this class would also be an 8. And then your choice would have to be that they are the same. They would have the same interquartile range. This is another explanation with what we just had. Each class had the same number of students. So if we took a look at question A, Class B had more passing scores. We knew that. Which class had the highest test scores? We had that as well, that it was Class A. And then when we said which class had a higher median, obviously the median was higher for Class B. And then which class had test scores with a larger interquartile range? We figured that out, that they were both the same. So both classes had the same IQR, which is your interquartile range. And that is it.